Brothers and sisters, good morning. Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life, speaking to you from our New York office. I'm doing my Facebook Live message very early this morning and also tomorrow morning, Thanksgiving Day, precisely because so many of you will be traveling, and I want you to know that my prayers and blessings are with you as you travel. This is one of the heaviest travel days of the year. And we send blessings to everyone, accompanying them as they go to visit family and friends for this uniquely American holiday. Let the virtue of patriotism be strong in us today as we give thanks to God in the spirit of our founders for the freedom He gives us in this country. And I want to continue exercising that freedom with you today by giving you a special message. We continue to celebrate the victories in this election, both on the state level, on the federal level, at the White House, in the Congress. We have gained many, many victories for pro-life public officials, and the pro-life public officials, with few exceptions, are Republican. Unfortunately, again, with few exceptions, are elected officials, and I want to focus in on Congress in a particular way and on the outgoing administration in the White House, are Democrats. And why their position on the killing of babies should be so evenly and consistently split along party lines really is a mystery that we should all challenge. A mystery, I say, because there's nothing inherent in the philosophies and the advocacy that those in the Democratic Party try to make. There's nothing inherent there that calls for the killing of babies. When you say you're for social justice, for standing up for the poor and for the weak, for working for equality and working for inclusion, why would that involve excluding the smallest children? And this is the challenge that I want to offer today. And to say that even though this election has been strongly won by the Republican candidates on every level, we still need to stop the Democrats. Democrats, that is, who are taking a pro-abortion position. We do not oppose the advancement of social justice. In fact, social justice requires that we protect the youngest children. And so this is a deep contradiction. And for those of you out there who belong to the Democratic Party or have sympathies for the Democratic Party, if you do oppose the killing of babies, well, then tell those higher up in the party that they need to oppose it too. In other words, the party has to change. And we've got a lot of people in Congress. Let's look at the battles coming up in Congress. We're going to have legislation to protect babies in the later stages of pregnancy, especially babies who can feel pain. We're going to pass legislation that protects those babies from being ripped apart by abortion. And mark my words, the opposition to this is going to come from the Democrats in Congress. Now, I want to give a shout out to my friend Congressman Dan Lipinski. He is a shining exception to the rule that those on the federal level in the Democratic Party tend to support abortion. He does not. And I thank him for standing so firm. We've been together on many occasions. But looking at the general picture, he knows as well as I do, the challenges that exist with those Democratic members of Congress who turn a blind eye to baby killing. My friends, why is this? They turn a blind eye to child killing. And when they are forced to address child killing in our nation, they'll try to go on some track that says, oh, well, you know, our policies are trying to reduce the numbers of abortions. Well, as I pointed out during the election campaign, and as I will continue to point out all year long, the issue here is not whether you are willing to work to reduce the number of abortions. The issue is whether you permit it, whether you think that you're authorized as a member of the Congress, whether you are authorized to permit child killing. That's the point right there. You're not permitted. You don't have the authority to allow the killing of a baby. And you notice I'm using the phrase killing of a baby because that's what abortion is. And as a way that we stop the march of the Democrats in support of Planned Parenthood, the march of the Democrats in support of Roe v. Wade, the march of the Democrats in support of the slaughter of children, the way that we stop this, the way that we begin, is to expose it. Show the American people what an abortion is. And so during the course of the campaigns and also during the course of the year, and we're going to intensify this now, and we want you to participate in it, we have a program, we have a project called Is This What You Mean? In other words, we challenge these Democratic public officials to tell us what they mean by the word abortion. And here's how we present the challenge. We've done this together with our colleague and full-time associate, Dr. Alveda King. We've gone into the offices of congressional Democrats, both in the House and in the Senate, and we've brought this challenge. And it's a very simple challenge, and I want you to know a website. It's priestforlife.org/isthiswhatyoumean. All one word, priestforlife.org/isthiswhatyoumean. Here's what we do. We take the quotes about what an abortion is. Let me read a couple of these quotes. Well, you know what? I'm going to do something better. I have something right here in this box. I'm going to show you what an abortion does in this metal box right here. I have the instruments that abortionists use to kill the babies. I'm going to show you just 3 of these instruments here right now. I have to be careful because they're very sharp, but I'm going to explain to you how they are used. I received these, by the way, from the office of an abortionist that was put out of business. Praise God, he's no longer killing babies. In the first trimester, oh, by the way, as I explain this to you, what I'm talking about is a procedure. It's an objective description of a procedure. And so what I'm going to do in order to emphasize the fact that what an abortion is, the violence of it, that it's the killing of a baby, and that we're trying to focus simply in on the meaning of the word as we challenge the Democratic congressional members to admit what this is and to start opposing it like they should, in order to answer in advance the charge that this is just a matter of religious belief. I want to point out that everything I'm about to say and quote and show you does not change no matter what religion you are. Now, if you're a follower and if you're a believer of God, you should have all the more readiness to defend these babies and to oppose the violence of abortion. But even if you're not, the fact of what abortion is still the same. The body still gets ripped apart, the blood is still red, it still flows. You can't deny what abortion is by appealing to religion. You see, that's an abuse of religion. Religion can be a path to seeing the truth better, opening our eyes. That's what it's supposed to do. Opening our eyes to injustice and giving us the strength to fight it. But some people use a religion as an escape and an excuse. An escape and an excuse. Those who are promoters of abortion, in fact, some of the abortionists who do the procedures I'm about to describe for you, they say, oh, I do abortion because of my faith. And the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice has Bible studies that they do in favor of choice and blessings for couples that are going to undergo an abortion. Liturgies for choice. Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice. Look it up. rcrc.org. This is an abuse of religion. These are false prophets. What do the terrorists do? As they fly airplanes into our buildings, as they behead and decapitate innocent people, they're invoking their God. They're offending God is what they're doing. And they're being false prophets. And that's an abuse of religion. So whenever religion covers up violence or is invoked as a way to cause people to shut their mouths about the violence, that's an abuse of faith. That's not faith. It's cowardice, mocking and abusing faith. So, in order to make the point, I'm going to take off my collar, just like this. And, because even if I weren't a priest, I'm fully committed to my priesthood, But even if I weren't a priest, even if I weren't a believer in God, what I'm about to tell you is still 100% true. I quote about the first trimester abortion procedure. This is from the medical textbook Abortion Practice by Dr. Warren Hearn, page 114. The physician will usually first notice a quantity of amniotic fluid, followed by placenta and fetal parts, which may be more or less identifiable. So in other words, not a mass of tissue and blood and fluid. It's identifiable body parts. The suction curettage abortion is carried out by the use of a suction tube, just like this. This tube here was used, sadly, to kill babies by this method. And there's an opening here at the top of the tube, and it is placed inside the uterus. And again, amniotic fluid and also baby parts come down this tube. But listen to this description given by abortionist Martin Haskell, with whom I have spoken, by the way, describing the legal activity of first trimester abortion. He gave this as sworn testimony in court. He said, when we do a suction curettage abortion, you know, roughly one of three things is going to happen during the abortion. One would be that the catheter, as it approaches the fetus, tears it and kills it at the instant that inside the uterus. The second would be that the fetus is small enough and the catheter large enough that the fetus passes through the catheter and either dies in transit as it's passing through the catheter or dies in the suction bottle after it's actually all the way out. So a baby passing through this plastic tube. This is abortion. 90% of the abortions are done in these first 3 months of pregnancy and by this method. Question, again, now this is to another abortionist under oath, Harlan Raymond Giles. Question, can the heart of a fetus or embryo still be beating during a suction curettage abortion as the fetus or embryo comes down the cannula? This is tragic stuff. And he says, yes, for a few seconds to a minute. The heart of the baby still beating as the baby is sucked down this tube. This is abortion. Now you go into the second trimester, it gets even more gruesome in a different way. Let me show you first the instruments. By the way, this is a curette, very, very sharp on the top, used to scrape the lining of the uterus. This is used both in first and second trimester killings and scraping out the body parts. But then you get into the second trimester, the body is getting bigger, and you need this instrument, the surgical forceps. Very sharp, hard, grasping. You take an arm, you take a leg of the baby and rip it off and pull it out. Let me read for you a description of this. A couple of descriptions coming again from the abortionists. This is again from a medical textbook called Abortion Practice, Warren Hearn, page 154. He writes, the procedure changes significantly at 21 weeks because the fetal tissue becomes much more cohesive and difficult to dismember. This problem is accentuated by the fact that the fetal pelvis may be as much as 5 centimeters in width. The calvaria, that's the head, is no longer the principal problem. It can be collapsed. Other structures, such as the pelvis, present more difficulty. A long curved Mayo scissors may be necessary to decapitate and dismember the fetus. So remember what we're talking about here. Our public officials, and in Congress, unfortunately, with very, very few exceptions that you can count on one hand, the members of the Democratic Party in Congress want to allow this practice to stay legal. And they oppose our efforts to protect these babies. And we're asking them, when you say the word abortion, is this what you mean? Is this what you mean? A long curved Mayo scissors may be necessary to decapitate and dismember the fetus? Is that what you want to allow in the United States of America? The U.S. Supreme Court talked about abortion this way in its Gonzalez versus Carhart decision back in 2007, when it was upholding a law protecting these babies. It said the doctor grips a fetal part with the forceps and pulls it back through the cervix. Continuing to pull, even after meeting resistance from the cervix, the friction causes the fetus to tear apart. For example, a leg might be ripped off the fetus as it is pulled through the cervix and out of the woman. The process of evacuating the fetus piece by piece continues until that has been completely removed. And brothers and sisters, this is a model of the kind of babies that are dismembered by this procedure. This baby would be about 18 weeks gestation. And what we're talking about is a process by which this instrument, and this very instrument has been used to kill babies like this, it grasps the leg, twists it, and pulls it out. Takes the arm of the child, like this, grasps really hard, twists it off the body. This is a living baby now. Twists it off the body and pulls it out. And then let's read again. Abortionist Martin Haskell says, we would attack the lower part of the lower extremity first. Remove, possibly a foot, then the lower leg at the knee, and then finally we get to the hip. Notice that abortionist Martin Haskell is not talking about freedom of choice, constitutional rights, and health care. He's talking about legs and feet and hips. And so again, we challenge those public officials, and I'm targeting the Democratic members of Congress here. When you say the word abortion, is that what you mean? Do you mean the same thing as the abortionists mean? That you grab a foot, a leg, an arm, rip it off a living child so that the baby dies? And then Martin Haskell says, when you come to the end of the procedure, listen to what he says, is the last part. He says, typically the skull is brought out in fragments rather than as a unified piece. So the forceps will put a nip in the head, grab a plate of the skull, rip it off, and pull it out, and then go back and get the rest, piece by piece by piece. It leaves you speechless. And again, I have my collar off because it doesn't matter when we're talking about this. What this is not something that comes from the church. What this procedure is not something that we read about in the catechism or in the Bible. You want to know what the abortion procedure is, you go to the medical textbooks about abortion. You go to the sworn testimony of the men and women who take instruments like this and kill babies like this. That's where you go to find out what this is. And let me tell you this too. Once you do find out what this is, you don't need the Bible, the church, or the priest to tell you that it's wrong. You need your own humanity to tell you that it's wrong. And the opposition to this comes from our own humanity, from our own conscience as human beings, not as members of one or another political party, not as members of one or another religious faith, as human beings. That's how and why and from where we oppose all this violence. So again, we still have to stop the Democrats who are in favor of killing these babies. Just ask them. And as soon as we start talking about stopping the violence and protecting these babies, they say, oh, well, we're doing a lot of things, that will help reduce the numbers of abortions. We're not talking about the reducing of the numbers of abortions. We're asking, should it be permissible, and do you think the government has the authority to permit this, tearing apart of these babies? That's what we challenge, and we're going to continue to challenge without stopping, without being silent, without slowing down in the least. We're going to expose this violence. We're going to pass legislation to start protecting these babies. And you mark my words, you see all the opposition, all the criticism, all the nonsense that is going to flow from the mouths of these congressional Democrats. I need you to join with me in challenging them and challenging them again and speaking up louder than they do and fighting harder than they fight for the protection of these babies and not their destruction. So thank you, friends. I know this is really tough stuff, but it's time to kick up some dust. It's time to shake things up in this country and to finally bring an end to this violence. So I thank you for standing with me in doing this. And in joining us. Remember, our action alerts at stopabortionnow.org is where you can sign up for the specific things that we will need you to do to pass the legislation to start protecting these babies from the violence of abortion. So I'm going to be praying for you today. Again, for those who are traveling, safe travels, happy travels as you get to gather with your family for the holidays. I'll be back tomorrow morning with a special Thanksgiving message. And by the way, one final word to my enemies and to my critics, both here online and elsewhere, just a fair warning. This message I just gave you is a trap. Brothers and sisters, thank you for joining me. Looking forward to talking with you again tomorrow. Happy Thanksgiving, and God bless you.